Welcome to the summary of Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung. Let's uncover the gems together. Key point 1. Be aware of your unconscious. Humans usually ignore the non-physical parts of life. However, Jung's findings offer a deeper perception of human psychology and the importance of the unconscious. The unconscious mind retains a bank of feelings, memories, urges, and thoughts. Conversely, the conscious mind deals with speedily processes and outwardly displays these actions. The conscious and the unconscious have an imperceptible relationship. We should not ignore the things our unconscious brings to notice, usually in the form of dreams. While primitive man was aware of and heeded the whisperings of the unconscious mind, modern man seems to have lost touch with his, essentially blocking communication between the two minds. Are you wondering why paying attention to your unconscious mind is essential? Does the idea of interacting with concepts beyond what you can see, feel, or touch intrigue you? Let's probe our minds together. Key point 2. The hidden possibilities. Humans use symbols and signs to express their feelings and thoughts about a particular thing. These tools help other individuals identify with what is being communicated. These expressions help us grasp or understand things our minds cannot fully comprehend. However, symbols are not always interpreted universally. Take, for instance, someone unfamiliar with the gospel of Jesus. They probably would interpret the symbol of the cross as something utterly different from what a Christian would. Our understanding is sometimes limited because the senses with which we perceive things lack knowledge. We can improve our lives through the ideas we get from the subconscious, like turning to scientific instruments that can accurately capture meaning. For instance, we use binoculars to see far and wide when doing so is impossible for the human eye. This very concept proves that there are certain places and things we would never be able to reach due to our consciousness alone. If we pay attention to our unconscious minds, we'll discover a world of new ideas. Whether we believe it or not, the unconscious mind often produces life-changing solutions. This occurrence is why psychologists can quickly identify a client's problem by listening to them describe their dreams. The more clients are allowed to elaborate on their dreams and thoughts, the more clarity the psychologist gets into the root of the problem. By affording the patient this freedom of speech, they would eventually say things they usually would not have said in their conscious state. There are certain events of which we have not consciously taken note. They have remained, so to speak, below the threshold of consciousness. Carl Jung. Key point 3. Interact with the invisible part of you. We often focus more on the reality of what we can see, feel, or touch. While this constant contact with reality is healthy, the unconscious and what is unseen also deserve our attention. It is incorrect to deny the truth of the unconscious, for that would mean denying the existence of the universe and nature. At one point or another, the unconscious tends to make an appearance, and it's during these times when those who think they have themselves and their emotions under control often lose it. While we can work with what we can see, what we can't see is harder to control. The things that happen in our lives and tend to find physical expression have been settled deep in our subconscious. It's why we often find ourselves in an emotional dilemma. For example, an ordinarily cool-headed person can lose their cool because of something relatively insignificant. Therefore, while it's essential to focus on consciousness, it's also vital to pay attention to the symbols of the unconscious. Your unconscious can kick in once in a while and prove you wrong. If we look at it critically enough, we will discover that although the unconscious is not so evident, it cannot separate from the conscience. This bond shows in our daily lives and activities. For example, you try to introduce a friend to someone but suddenly seem to have forgotten that friend's name, only to remember it an hour later. During its absence, you knew it was somewhere and would come to you eventually. The fact that you had forgotten the name doesn't simply put it out of existence. It merely temporarily evaded your consciousness. Man, as we realize if we reflect for a moment, never perceives anything fully or comprehends anything completely. Carl Jung. Key point 4. The role of dreams. In our oblivion to the unconscious, we often ignore the symbols that come through our dreams, disregarding the message our unconscious mind tries to deliver. But if we paid proper attention and analyzed the things we daydream about, we would discover things about ourselves that we would never have thought existed. Do not discard your dreams because you cannot connect them with reality. Every dream, no matter how insignificant, has an importance and a message to convey. The message, however, cannot be decoded with our ordinary consciousness because we are prone to see many of these symbols as useless, especially if they're strange to us. For instance, a patient dreamt of a vulgar, unkempt woman he perceived as his wife, but she was vastly different from his actual spouse. Initially dismissing it as nonsense, deeper analysis by a psychologist suggested the dream hinted at a hidden aspect of himself, not his wife. This assessment aligns with Jung's concept that every man harbors a feminine side, enigma, representing a weaker connection with others and himself. So the man's dream, a projection of his internal feminine aspect, revealed parts of his psyche he concealed, even from himself. However, this example is insufficient proof that the unconscious is concerned with moral behavior. Therefore, we must pay attention to every symbol and subject in our dreams to identify what our unconscious minds are trying to bring to our attention. Did you know? According to a 2022 National Institutes of Health, or NIH report, although people spend about 2 hours per night dreaming, they don't remember most of their dreams. Key point 5. Conscious versus unconscious. When dealing with the unconscious mind, it's important to note that it is nothing like the conscious. The unconscious often yearns to tell a story, but these stories are not something we can interpret plainly. While the conscious mind tries to be prim and proper with how it relates, the unconscious mind does not. While the conscious mind works with time and a particular organized structure, the unconscious cannot align its symbols and signs in a way we can easily decipher. Our unconscious relates to us by taking signals from our emotional reactions. It can work with anything, whether it's something we've heard, seen, or even felt. And it is through these means that it sends us a message, albeit without filter or organization. For example, a man's coworker misinterpreted what he said, and the man might have thought his coworker was not angry at that moment. But his unconscious might later reveal the anger in a dream by depicting a strange man jumping on his back. Upon closer inspection, his initial reaction, "I don't give a damn what you say or think about me," can translate as, "You can jump on my back." This translation, however, also depends on the cultural context. Your consciousness often works accurately only due to the presence of your unconscious. The unconscious constantly relates to our consciousness and helps regulate the control we seem to think we have, so we should never disregard it. We can see this connection in how we unconsciously push certain emotions we would not exhibit on a typical day, or might handle better at other times, to our subconscious. We do this because we need to be as organized as possible. Key point 6. Unconscious in daily life. Common sense is something all humans must be able to work with every day. How often have you seen someone label a person not using their common sense as mentally abnormal? But while common sense is essential, it also doesn't accurately explain the unconscious. Frequently, brilliant people enter a state of unexplained shock when confronted with their unconsciousness. Their common sense simply cannot register that an ordinary human mind can encounter such experiences. Hence, that which we can't explain with common sense seems impossible, leading some people to doubt their sanity. Be constantly aware of the unconscious to avoid losing touch with it. The awareness, or lack thereof, of the unconscious is why dreams are a more prominent way to relate to us. For instance, Jane, well known for her stubborn resistance to reasoned arguments among colleagues, would never believe she was wrong. She always felt she was the most intelligent person in the room. Her dreams, however, showed her what others could not. She dreamed she was attending a gala where the hostess greeted her, told her all her friends were waiting for her, and then led her to a cowshed. Although initially confusing, her dream was trying to convey that she was less indispensable than she thought. Jane admitted the point of her dream was a strike at her self-importance. While we can be distracted by our daily activities and not pay attention to specific details, we can be sure that our unconscious records them. Conclusion. Our conscious and unconscious minds complement each other, although one is evident while the other is not. The unconscious tries to make its appearance now and then, something we should not ignore. Aside from the fact that we can gain valuable insights, it contributes to how we relate with others. The unconscious helps us maintain balance and equilibrium psychologically and mentally. It warns us against unseen dangers, most times using our dreams. If we disregard these warnings, we'll only have ourselves to blame. Try this. Keep a journal of your daily activities. When you have a dream, write it down as soon as possible, no matter how insignificant or distorted it might be. Review your activities log to discover the dream's possible message. That's all for now. More intriguing summaries are just a click away.